Quote, over the past few years, black bears have faced unprecedented habitat loss due to climate change and wildfires, and continued sport hunting in California makes survival an even tougher climb. It's time we stop this inhumane practice once and for all.
I mean, how many times have you gone out hunting where you don't see a buck, but you'll see 2 or 3 bears? I know it's definitely my case hunting in D3, 4, 5. So being involved, and when you see those emails come out about these things, be involved, contact your state senators and tell them that you support hunting and you support sound wildlife management through science. And, after, like right now, I'm encouraging people, contact your state senator again and let them know. Thank you for pulling that bill and speaking up on behalf of hunters and our wildlife. So people just need to keep it on the radar, and just remember, just because we won this battle, the war still goes on, and don't let this be a death by 1,000 cuts.
Welcome to the RNA Outdoors podcast, hosted by Lucas Paw. Our purpose is to help educate and inspire within you a renowned passion for the outdoors. So join us as we speak with experts in the industry to share insight and knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Quote, over the past few years, black bears have faced unprecedented habitat loss due to climate change and wildfires, and continued sport hunting in California makes survival an even tougher climb. It's time we stop this inhumane practice once and for all. Close quote. Senator Scott Wiener, Democratic senator in the state of California. So, interesting opening here, but that was actually the introductory comment that Mr. Wiener had provided to basically public comment when he was proposing Assembly Bill or Senate Bill 252, which is basically the proposal to end sport hunting of black bears in the state of California. So, the interesting part about this is that, this is not to say that bears will not be managed in the state of California, because bears do come into conflict with public safety, livestock. We've seen a lot of stories around predation of fawn, from California deer around fawn populations. So, they will be killed by the state of California. With a growing bear population, this will just add up to a heck of a lot more bears. So when you really think about it, the state is going to put basically more burden on its taxpayers by paying government-sanctioned shooters to eliminate bears, which is something that hunters, obviously gladly will do. The numbers don't lie. Right now, there's a 1,700 bear quota that California nets roughly around $1.39 million in revenue from tag sales, and any money that may come from, Pittman-Robertson Act. So, you think about a sportsman, and we know that money doesn't just go to benefit bears, right? It goes to a much broader fund that's earmarked for all of conservation by the state of California, which, again, kind of gets to our North American, model of wildlife conservation. So it's a very controversial subject right now. Clearly in the heart of California, we're going to talk more about it, the sheer amount of hunters in this state, and really the outcry that came out of this proposal ended up actually getting pushed down on Monday. Senator Wiener repealed the Senate Bill 252, basically stated that there were other emerging issues in the state in midst of the pandemic and other things happening, which and I think, we've all talked about it. Really there was not a premise for this bill even in the first place to be put in place. So, so with that, kind of opening, I want to bring in our guest tonight, who is the chair of the California chapter of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, or other words known as BHA, and a good friend of mine as well, someone I've known and met through some hunting organizations in the past, and also known through BHA, and also a former and also a colleague and a California resident as well, Nick Zagaris. So, hey, Nick, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How you doing, bud?
Well, after Monday, I feel a heck of a lot better. I don't know about you, but up until Monday, you and I were talking, and we're talking about, man, we need to get on the horn together and start talking about this, and really, pushing the narrative around the precedent that this could set potentially in the state of California around banning bears. So, timing is different now. Things have changed, but, I think I said it in a post before, I think we won the battle here, but the war has just begun. So anyway, maybe Nick, just talk a little bit about yourself and kind of the position that you hold in the state of California.
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm the chair of the California chapter of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And for us, I always like to say that we might not have the per capita of hunters that other states like Wyoming or Montana have, but just by pure population, we have a lot more hunters because, just think about how many people are not only hunting in California itself, but, they're hunting all over, not just the United States, but the world. It's funny, man. I dropped off my my elk to get a Euro mount done, and my taxidermist had stuff from Spain. He had stuff from New Zealand. It was crazy. So just think about that. Just in my little area alone, I live in Auburn, just outside of Sacramento in the foothills. And my little taxidermist here, he's got stuff coming from all over the world. So we definitely have a lot of hunters here in the state. Yep,
absolutely. And, and so maybe we can just kind of dive into it, right? And you come from, advocacy from kind of the BHA side of it. I come from I would say a very similar kind of opinion on all of this. But, when you really think about, and I talked about the precedent of, banning black bear hunting, this actually goes back to the 90s when mountain lion hunting was banned in the early 90s. And then you fast forward to, 2010, 2012, where hounding of bobcats and bears was made illegal or banned. And then from there, you had quotas that have never been touched, right? It's a 1,700 bear quota in the state. Last year, there was over 900 bears taken, I believe, was around the number. But what we're seeing is a success story around black bear populations in the state where, over the course of the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen a twofold increase in the population of black bears. But Nick, from your stance, what does this say and what does this do for you guys in terms of, I guess, the direction that you guys go now, knowing that this is a threat to the state of California?
Well, like anything, anytime a bill gets put forth, the first thing they want to do is throw out a feeler to kind of judge its popularity. And I saw a whole bunch of different websites talking about through conservation work how many people contacted their state politician, but the last number I saw was over 27,000 people hunting conservation either called, emailed, or sent a letter directly to their state senator, which was awesome. All the conservation groups, we all got together, and it was amazing just to have a bill, not even just in its infancy, pretty much get shot down just from everybody just getting together and everybody getting on the same page, which was awesome. I couldn't even imagine if that bill would have gone forth to a vote, how many people would have contacted. But just to have that many people involved was humbling on the side of I'm just one person and one conservation group. But think of how many people from whether it be BHA to California Deer Association, California Waterfowl Association, Rocky Mountain Elk. Everybody got together and really lit the fires under their membership and said, "Hey, we need to contact and get the word out." So definitely the word was out, and unfortunately, this was more of a feeler. This is one of those bills where, just like you brought out in the 90s, they banned mountain lion hunting. Then they banned hunting of bears with hounds. Then they banned bobcat. So we'll never see a bill that directly bans hunting, but it's death by 1,000 cuts,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty soon, the only thing left to be hunt will, maybe deer during a certain season that nobody can really access. So, I mean, that's how hunting will die in our state unless we really step forward and use our advocacy and be known and get out there and then establish those relationships with our congressional officials. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just really awesome to see that many people step forward and contact their local politicians. You brought out the bear numbers now. In 1982, California Department of Fish and Wildlife did a study. They said bear populations were between 10 and 15,000. And then they did a study a couple years ago, and they're finding now that bears are between 30 and 40,000. So bears are not endangered. Bears aren't even threatened. In fact, their populations are thriving right now. So it's just one of those things where they like to take advantage of a bad situation with things like wildfires going on right now and trying to say that they don't have habitat. But I mean, how many times have you gone out hunting where you don't see a buck, but you'll see 2 or 3 bears? I know it's definitely my case hunting in D3, 4, 5. So
Mm-hmm. No, yeah,
it's disturbing.
You bring up a great point. I mean, I've hunted Northern California, and the probability of seeing a legal bear, right, which is basically a boar or basically a sow that doesn't have cubs, you're going to have a higher probability of finding a legal bear than probably a legal buck. And you're 100% right. And in that comment that I opened with, I wanted to start with that because it's interesting when we talk about how it's unprecedented habitat loss due to wildfires. Well, here's a funny thing. It's not only bears. Every animal that lives in the forest has to deal with the same habitat loss, right? It's not only bears, but making their survival rates an even tougher climb and to stop an inhumane practice, right? It reeks of political injustice, if you ask me. And when you think about, I guess, the bigger scope and the bigger scheme, you hit on it earlier about how this is a global issue, right? You said, you're taking your taxon or your elk in and you're seeing animals from all over the world. Well, let me tell you, this isn't the first place that bears have been banned, right? British Columbia, about 3 years ago, basically stated that because bears are considered a charismatic species, right, and they got basically public opinion polls in a majority of people to agree on this, they banned grizzly bear hunting in British Columbia, right? And again, and a lot of people throw out, the science piece and the emotional piece and the feelings piece and all of that stuff aside, right? This all becomes really a political agenda at the end of the day. And oh, by the way, right, who's leading, who's the lead sponsor behind this bill? It's the Humane Society of the United States. So when you really put all this together, it doesn't take, I'd say a PhD to really, dissect this thing and understand, kind of where this thing is coming from. But again, that alone, should tell you, that this bill is suspect, and the fact that yet it's another step down the slippery slope of throwing sound wildlife management out the window, because reality is scary and it's very uncomfortable. And people think that, because they would classify this as a charismatic species that, to your point, has to be protected or it's threatened. And it's quite the opposite of that, to your point, in the bear populations and estimates that you talked about. So it's, and I don't know where you stand with it, Nick, and maybe where BHA stands with it, but my view is that it's very, very political, and that a lot of these Senate bills or Assembly bills that come at us kind of from a hunting and conservation standpoint, they're very political. There is emotion behind them. They're typically not driven by good facts and good science, and that's an issue, right? Because why have biologists, why have California Fish and Wildlife if we're not going to use the data and all the work that they put into this? So I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments around, where you think some of this activity comes from.
No, and just to kind of answer your question, how BHA feels about it, we're always an advocate for not only public lands, but a science and fact-based wild management, for our nation's wildlife. So just to go off of a bill, off of the feel-good factor, that's definitely not where we sit. Now, if Fish and Game came forward and said our wildlife needs, or bears, for as an example, we need to bring the numbers back, maybe, and this is how wildlife management is done. They'll look at the numbers of tags available, how many were filled, the overall population, and then that's how they come up with how many tags are available. So if they were to say, hey, the black bear is on a decline, we need to cut the amount of tags sold down to 500, for example. The science is the science, and we would support that. But just to have a bill go forward that says, based on nothing but we think that due to the environmental changes and fires and the sportsmen killing too many bears, we need to ban the practice. We definitely don't agree with it, and our actions have showed that. We really encouraged our members to contact their state senators, which they did. And kind of to go along with the verbiage that you quoted from Wiener earlier, there was 30,394 bear tags sold, and that brought in almost $1.4 million that goes toward actual habitat restoration and the biology and the research. And to have that taken out of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's budget would be drastic. So while that bill basically says it's here to help the bears, it's actually going to hurt the bears in the long run.
Yeah, and so you think about, and that's a good segue when you think about, so what's next, right? So we've talked about the proposal, we've talked about, kind of some of the facts, and the facts are the facts. You can go Google the facts, all day long, and anyone that knows anything about, any type of increasing population can see that. And again, in my opinion, there's a narrative here, and it's a successful narrative, and it's something that I think organizations need to push. And the success story is what we've seen with how we've modeled and managed black bears in the state of California, right? And they've been managed, and there's been a quota, right? There's been a 1,700 bear quota. Used to be, I think, 2,000 years ago, was dropped to 1,700. Look at units in California and the Sierras like Goodale, the G3 tag. There used to be 35 tags for that hunt in December. Well, now there's 25 tags, right? Well, what they've realized is they're trying to manage, the age class of the mule deer in that group, in that herd. So, and that's good wildlife management. That's what you have to do to bring back certain genetics or certain, age class of animals. You look at Utah and the Paunsaugunt, they do cactus hunts where they take out bad genetic bucks, right? So that's where biologists, that's where they actually do their work and do their science and provide for a good experience for a hunter who, as good as well as I do to draw that Goodale tag. It could take someone 20 some years to do that, right? They want people to have a good experience. But to me, it's not much of a stretch to see, where all this is going, right, in the long run. And if you've got the Humane Society pushing for more and more predator hunting bans, across more and more states, and again, they're citing public opinion polls, right? They're not citing good science, fact-based decisions here. For me, it starts with predators, and I think what's next, and you talked about it, is sport hunting, and that's concerning because when you think about elk, deer, antelope, upland birds, waterfowl, all those things that California provides, right? The goal, in my mind, is to end hunting, and is accomplished again by kind of taking those small bites out of the North American model of wildlife conservation, and over a long period of time, that's what they want to do. So, predator hunting is a start. Trapping is another piece of this that they've done. And again, that's not where they're going to end. So you talked about it, right? What are some things people can do? You can, contact your state senators, your representatives, let them know and stand up for how you feel about this. There was a petition going around. Obviously, there was just a lot of real quick energy that hit with this. And what I thought was interesting with it, and I want to get your take on it, is it wasn't all, folks really advocating from California. I saw people from all over the globe, I saw people from the the Western Bear Foundation, which I think is run out of Cody, Wyoming. I saw people over, Bear Magazine. Clay Newcomb was very vocal about it. I mean, there were people all over the globe speaking out about this, and I think what they realized is the precedent that this could set, right, in the state here, that it now opens up the doors across the rest of the U.S. So, I don't know, interesting to see the uprise and the grassroots really, advocacy from everyone, from all those organizations come together. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments about that.
No, I mean, it's awesome to see that, because as a hunting as a collective, whether it be if you live in Maine or Florida or Saskatchewan, California, we're all in this together. And if you look at politically, look at our climate now, how California goes, generally the rest of the United States goes. So just because you're able to hunt bears in Montana or Idaho right now, if they look at how easy it was to ban bear hunting in California, don't think that within 8 to 10 years that the same bill won't be knocking on your door in one of those other states. And when we see those bills, like there's one in Montana right now that I'd highly encourage everybody to get involved in. They're trying to say 60% of the tags sold would require hiring an outfitter. So again, somebody that likes to hunt out of state, I don't want that to happen. I like to do all my hunts DIY, and I know you do as well. So having the support of everybody and kicking the tires and lighting fires is the way to go. So when you see bills like this, just because it isn't in your backyard doesn't mean it won't be soon. Yep. So it's extremely important as a hunting as a group that we all get together and make sure that we keep our heritage alive.
And that's a good point. So so this one in Montana, I've actually kind of remained silent on it for a couple reasons, but I've listened and I've viewed people's arguments on both sides of this one, because I mean I'm technically I still get a Montana hunting license, resident license, and elk tag and deer tag every year through the come home and hunt, because I was born and raised there and I had my hunting safety there, so I get to come back basically and hunt as a resident. But I'm still a non-resident, right? And when I apply for trophy deer, elk, sheep, moose, and goat, I'm in the non-resident pool just like anyone else who's a non-resident. But it's interesting, and I agree. Like for me, I don't use outfitters, right? And the only time I'd use an outfitter is if I had to go to BC and hunt stone sheep, or if I had to go to, if I had to go hunt wilderness in Wyoming for something, you got to have an outfitter or a resident. So there are certain circumstances where it's required, but Montana is a place where, I go load up my truck and I go elk hunt every fall, and then I go back and I deer hunt with my family over Thanksgiving, right? So that would definitely impact someone like me from the ability to do that. Now, do I know outfitters? Do I know people that have leased land? Yeah, I could probably make it work. A lot of people don't have that connection. But here's the other side of the argument. When you look at it from the residents' standpoint in Montana, they love it, right? And most of them that are speaking out are saying, you know what, I don't mind if 60% of the tags are on all the leased and private lands under outfitters, where that allows me to go out and actually hunt public land that's completely overrun by hunters anymore. And that's what the Montana folks talk about, is how many out-of-state hunters are coming into Montana. But at the same token, right, it's $1,100 a tag for a non-resident to come in and hunt. That's a huge revenue stream for Montana. So they could technically lose revenue as a basis for this type of regulation that they want to apply. So it's interesting. Like I said, I've kind of remained silent on it because I've got mixed feelings about which way it goes. But I mean, it's stuff like this that, it's interesting that this is the direction that some of the states want to go, because I think at the end of the day, it can be damaging to really the source of revenue that a lot of these states could bring in. Because I'll tell you, and you're probably like me, if you had to go to a state and had to hire an outfitter, you're probably not going to go there, right? I mean, I'm not. I wouldn't have any desire to.
No, and I mean, I haven't done an out-of-state hunt with a guide. I'm a DIY kind of guy, but I mean, if somebody else wants to do it, more power to them. But I'm all about somebody having the choice. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to go, if you're going to pay the tag and you want the highest amount of success, by all means, you know, that's why guides are out there, because, you know, they're running a lucrative business and they want to make sure that you're getting the animal that you want to get and you're having the best time that you possibly can.
Yep.
Then there's people like me that like to go out there and generally don't get it done and suffer the whole time. So but either way, the state is making money, just like you said. And we're kind of unique in California where while our tag sales fund a lot of stuff, a lot of it is funded through the state budget, where you look at a state like Montana or Idaho, with majority of their funding for their, whether it be the Department of Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife, whatever they call it, Department of Natural Resources, a majority of their funding is coming from the out-of-state tags. So just like you mentioned, it could really hurt, you know, the wildlife management later on.
Yep.
To pass a bill like that. So
yep.
That's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, I mean, it's interesting. You know, California becomes under fire on, you know, black bears, and then you hear about, you know, this assembly bill going on in Montana about this. I mean, it's constant, right? And that, I think that's part of it. I think part of it is, you know, like I said, there's all these little battles going on, but there's this huge war that's happening, you know, all around us, and it is, and it's a marathon, right? I mean, there's all these little, you know, 100-yard dash races amongst this marathon. And if you win enough of those little 100-yard dash races, you know, you can defend off some of this regulation that does get promulgated and doesn't make it through the legislative process. But their goal is in this end, in the end of the 26 miles, right, that, you know, they really want to cease hunting. And, you know, whether it's in California, look what's happening in Oregon. There's a lot of stuff happening in Oregon too. So, you know, I think globally it's concerning. It's good to see that we have, you know, all of the advocates out there that are working towards the same, you know, common denominator. I mean, I talked with Safari Club International late last week regarding the bear ban, because they know I was pretty vocal about it and stepped up, and so I had a call with some of their folks and just interacted with a lot of different organizations that I normally don't interact with, but you know, it's important, and like you said, that we do step up and we do speak, you know. If it's something that's impacting us, and what happens, at least for me, is it becomes personal, right? And when it becomes personal, that's when I typically, you know, I call it my relief valve starts to pop, and I start, you know, kind of going and ranting a little bit. But I don't know, maybe we can just sew up the black bear subject here. And I think we talked about it, right? This isn't done. You know, we won the first race here, but this is going to come back. We're going to see it in a different form or fashion. They're going to either try to slide it into maybe another bill, or they're going to come at it in a different way. Clearly they didn't have, you know, like I say, their pencil sharpened like they needed to. But if and when this comes back, you know, what are some things in your mind, and maybe even thinking more strategically from a California base, what are some things we need to be thinking about or doing, again, to ensure that this does not pass in the future?
Well, obviously through my position through BHA, I'm a huge supporter of conservation, and just because my political involvement with BHA doesn't mean I'm not a member of multiple other conservation groups. You know, I'm a member of California Deer Association, California Waterfowl Association, Mule Deer Foundation. I mean, I've got all these little random cards in my wallet that say I'm a member, and just being involved. And when you see those emails come out about these things, be involved. Contact your state senators and tell them that you support hunting and you support sound wildlife management through science. And you know, after, like right now, I'm encouraging people, contact your state senator again and let them know, thank you for pulling that bill and speaking up on behalf of hunters and our wildlife. So people just need to keep it on the radar, and just remember, just because we won this battle, now the war still goes on, and don't let this be a death by a thousand cuts. You know, keep vigilant, keep your eye on things, and support conservation. I think that's the overall overall goal, I would tell people to make sure when this comes up again, because it will, just make sure that you're aware and you're vocal again.
Yeah. The other thing, people have asked me, like, what else can I do? And, obviously there's, contact your, like say, your state senators, representatives. But, I told people, I said, go buy a bear tag, right? Go support what we're doing, right? And also share the narrative that, bear populations, in the estimates in terms of the data that you showed, right? They're very stable and they're increasing. And so I think that's an important narrative that's not shared and not shared enough and not made public enough. And people need to know that. People need to know that there's a lot of success, and all that success has happened based on, to your point, good wildlife management, conservation by hunters, biology at work, all of that stuff coupled together is why the black bear populations have increased over the past 25 years. And that's the story that needs to be shared. That's the narrative that needs to be shared, right? Not the fact that global warming and wildfires have made it, just an unprecedented time for black bears. I mean, come on, you got to come at this a little differently than that. So anyway, that's what I tell people. Hey man, go buy a black bear tag. And if you go hunt or not, you know what, put one in your pocket, $30-$40. And to your point, if you're hunting Northern California, you're probably going to have a crack at a bear anyway when you would a legal buck. So, but no, good feedback. I think getting involved is important. And whether it's voicing your opinion or to your point, paying $35-$50 a year to an organization for them to, be an advocate for you, I think is important too. So good feedback, buddy. Wanted to segue a little bit. So, and again, the whole black bear thing, I think is, obviously the crux of the conversation, but you've kind of brought up an interesting subject, and you have personal experience with it. You drew basically a once in a lifetime elk tag last year, which I remember when you drew that, and my buddy Brad's like, hey man, Nick drew a Marble Mountain Roosevelt elk tag in Siskiyou Forest. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Right. And so you drew the tag, you had the hunt, you had a great time, you shot a good bull, but there was this whole world happening around us, around wildfires and forest closures and a lot of things happening that could have actually, damaged that hunt for you and potentially did for other people. And I guess I'm curious to hear, your experience there, kind of your feedback on that. And then if there's anything, we can be doing, because right now I know of forests and wilderness that are still closed in this general area. And I'm not convinced it's still about fires. If it's about erosion, okay, I can get there. But I think there's different agendas around why forests are closed right now. But interesting to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So kind of going back to that elk tag, that was pretty epic to be so lucky and draw it. Our odds on that tag are few and far between, and my buddy and I drew that with only 5 points. So to draw a party tag for such a rare, people sit, I like you were talking about, you're sitting on max points and you haven't been lucky enough. And my buddy and I drew that with only 5 was awesome. But that we drew that, and we go up there in September, and there's some fires around us, and Interestingly enough, I was able to shoot mine on opening day due to the warm weather. I usually like to do my own butchering, but I had to basically load it up in my friend's truck. And my plan, we're hunting outside of an area where a fire had just picked off, and just as luck would have it, the butcher I was planning on taking it to, his house burned down, which is terrible for him. So I ended up having to drive all the way over into the small town of Red Bluff in order to get my meat butchered. And then when I came back, my friend was packing his out as Forest Service had just left to notify everybody that the forest was closed. So, and that was day 2 of the season. So there's a lot of people that were counting on having that, tag that they finally had all max points, and they were able to draw that tag and basically had nowhere to hunt because of the fire closures. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's kind of it's a double-edged sword. I actually work as a firefighter, but I'm also into conservation in our public lands. And what I hate to see is our public lands and the managing of it have a trigger point to where, whether it be a red flag condition or so many fire resources are committed to other fires that they close the forest down. We've been talking about this a lot at BHA level because there's a lot of our members lost their opportunity to hunt in their zones, and lost not just for elk or sheep or things like that, but just a lot of people don't have the money and the ability to go out of state, so they really rely on their resident deer tag, and they weren't able to do that. So we really want to see a more freedom-based approach to see if that would be more successful than a closure. Things like banning OHV use or banning cooking fires or campfires, things like that. Having road closure instead of banning the whole use of the national forest. Mm-hmm. So very, very hot topic right now. Our members still are contacting us like, hey, we haven't forgot that my hunting spot was closed this year. What's BHA doing about it? And at the BHA level, we're forming an op-ed piece that we're sending out to various newspapers. But in the same end, we're also trying to get together and meet with some of those forest managing agencies and make sure this doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. So is it, to me, there's obviously, you've got all the different tiers here. You've got, the Bureau of Land Management, you've got National Forest Service. You've got all the different, both state and federal, I guess you call them agencies. But so like BLM, like a lot of the fire restrictions are temporary, like public land closures. I get it. They're probably doing a lot of it to reduce the risk of the wildfires and really to protect the public. I get that. And what we're seeing now from a lot of the, utility companies, if we know we're going to have high winds and storms, we're going to turn your power off because we can't afford to be sued for, $20 billion because of the last, forest fire that we don't know whether we caused it or not. Right. But oftentimes these measures, really focus on human related activities, like you said. So campfires, off-road driving, like you said, OHV use, recreational target shooting is another one that I know is big and kind of a hot topic. And again, a lot of those are really, probably the number one cause of wildfires and a lot of human related activities, things that you and I like to do. And to your point, okay, so they can go ban OHV use. Well, okay, I got 2 legs. I'm going to throw on a pack and I'll go spend 3-4 days, out in the wilderness or in the forest. That's not a problem. But you and I are, probably the upper, 3 to 5%. Right, that do that stuff. So this impacts a huge group of people. And to your point, there's a lot of people that A, physically can't go do that, or B, don't have the money to go out of state. So they rely on, like you said, their resident hunting license and the tags that they have in the state to do this. But, it's concerning to me because I'm looking at it from my standpoint, and you and I were talking last week. There's forest and wilderness that's still closed here. And literally the gate is shut. It's locked. It's got a big padlock on it, closed indefinitely, due to wildfires. It's like, okay, we just got the Pineapple Express rain shower, a week ago. It's like, I'm pretty sure fires aren't an issue anymore. But now they talk about, the erosion and all the problems with that. So it's like, when does this ever end? Right. And now's the best time to go, recreate, and we can't go do that stuff. And, oh, by the way, basically 90% of the Central Coast where I live is private land. So how do you go do a lot of those activities? So it is an emerging issue and a concern. And I think it's worthy of, the fight that you guys are putting into it. And to your point, there's not a lot people can do other than really voice their opinions and speak up about the subject. So it's a real life issue that, I don't think a lot of people really truly understand either.
No, and you're correct. And through wildfire just doesn't affect, how do I want to phrase this? It's not just the potential to have a fire. You could have an area where a fire goes through and there might be, like you talked about, erosion or roads that are washed out. What a lot of people don't understand is that the Forest Service is extremely backlogged on basic road maintenance. I know some of the access areas I go, the road's like a washboard the whole way, and there's concrete and that's broken up and rocks in the road and trees that are falling and stuff like that. So hopefully through the Great American Outdoors Act that was passed, we'll start to see a lot of this backlogged maintenance that needs to happen for our roads and our trail access start to relieve some of that. But right now, yeah, I mean, I believe actually, like areas in the Angels National Forest is still closed up to a lot of people for the wildfire issue, and it's definitely on our radar. It's something we're working on. We're trying to meet with the land managers and try to get the stuff opened up so people can go out and enjoy the public lands again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in a time we're living in right now, under these circumstances, a lot of people want to go out and go do stuff, right? They can't go to Disneyland anymore. You can't go watch a ball game, in San Francisco, watch the Giants play. You can't go watch a concert anymore. There's so much you can't do, but something you can go do is you can go out and recreate, right? And then when the fires happen, the forests and the wilderness and the public lands get closed. So then it really starts to lock down on people where they can't go out and do a lot of the things they love to do. And I kind of fell into that too. I mean, a lot of the good places I like to deer hunt, all public land, ended up getting closed because of a couple big fires that kind of swept through. So it does impact people's right to go do the things that they like to do. And especially, like I say, in an unprecedented time right now where you can't go do a lot of the things that you like to do. It's concerning. And to your point, there's a lot of funding issues, like you say, the backlogs of maintenance and things at the state. I mean, we're already talking about a state with a fiscal unresponsible, process, and we're trying to get a lot of stuff done, and it's just so much stuff that's stacking up. But anyway, it's an interesting conversation. I think it pairs well with kind of our original topic because, these are all things that, people need to be vocal about and people need to step up. And it's amazing when you get enough people together, the amount of mass movement that you can get and happen. And that's kind of what I said, when I saw a post about, the kind of the bear repeal and all that. And I said, the masses spoke and it worked, and it's pretty amazing when you get a group of people together, what you can do in a short amount of time. And again, having companies like, you guys, organizations like you guys and others that are really on our side, pushing and pushing and pushing is important. So.
Yeah, I mean, in only a few days, 27,000 people contacting their politician. I mean, that's not a small number. And imagine if that bill kept going forward, how many people would have contacted. So, I mean, the writing on the wall was there for them. But I mean, it's like we keep talking about. It's death by a thousand cuts, and we won this battle, but the war goes on. So, everybody just needs to be vigilant and really, keeping their eye on the prize here and making sure that they're staying involved and that, they're supporting conservation and buying those tags like they keep doing. Make sure that our California Department of Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife ends up keeping the funding and we keep our bear hunt going. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Nick, so no shows this year. Usually you and I connect to shows or there's no rendezvous going on. It's all kind of virtual stuff. What's kind of going on, I guess, in the BHA world, or what do you guys, is there any information you can share, things you guys are talking about, things you guys are trying to do kind of amidst the whole virtual world, in-person contact stuff?
Yeah. So unfortunately on the event side, COVID we had a lot of events planned. And we had like a beer, deer and gear. We had a whole bunch of pint nights, some archery shoots, and that kind of got kicked to the wayside due to do all the COVID stuff. So we're looking into some virtual stuff right now. We're trying to plan like a virtual bear cooking event. Kind of, I guess you would say, riding on the coattails of Senate Bill 252 going down, but that definitely got a lot of people's interest peaked on bears. So we want to make sure that people go out and buy their bear tags and end up harvesting a bear. Now what are you going to do with it? Well, here's some recipes, and here's how you can process a bear. That's on our radar. We've been kind of focusing away from the events and kind of really going along the policy side of things, along with the fire closures that we talked about. We're really trying to look into more like things around habitat watch. We have people that are in different parts of the state that are kind of keeping an eye on different national forests for us. So if there's an issue with like trail closures and things like that, make sure we keep public access open. We have a bunch of, for example, like around Sutter County near Yuba City, we're looking into some closures there. We're really working also through our R3, our hunter retention recruitment lines, and really just trying to get more people out there. And where there's a bad situation, there's also opportunity. So a lot of people bought license and tags this year because, like you said, you're not going to a Giants game. Well, let's go out in the outdoors and enjoy it. So we're really trying to get our hunter numbers up and have people enjoy hunting instead of watching the Giants. You can do both of those things, but
for sure,
we definitely want you to go out in the woods and enjoy it if you haven't done that before. We're looking into starting our first collegiate chapter for BHA here in the state, and we're really trying to do more like a regional model, because BHA as a whole is in different states with you look at some place like Montana where the majority is going to live around Missoula and Bozeman. Well, the entire population of Montana would basically reside in a small area like Fresno, for example. So for us, really trying to have a manageable size for different population zones is definitely on our radar at the California level anyway for BHA. So this is all stuff we're working on if we can't do big events, but you'll start seeing us roll out events again as COVID starts to go away and county restrictions in different areas start to die down a little bit. And then you'll start seeing us do pint nights again, and you'll start seeing us do things like storytelling events, archery events, fishing events, stuff like that. So I would just encourage people, if you're interested in any of that, go on our social media or just sign up for our email alerts, and then you can stay tuned.
Cool. Well, I think, on that front, I think we're seeing a little bit turning the corner. I mean, cases are still, happening and all that, but at least the data that I'm seeing, kind of from a work standpoint, is we are seeing, we saw the spike in October, November. We're starting to see kind of it turn again now, kind of decreasing now, still in high tiers, and it's all a tiered system. But hopefully, as the governor released the stay-at-home order, and obviously as vaccines start to become more available, and I think our herd immunity piece to this as well happens. I mean, you can't stop an invisible virus. That's the thing. And I think the reality people need to understand is that either going to get it or you're going to get vaccinated for it. But at the same time, as that continues to happen, I think we're going to see more stuff opening up. I'm actually seeing more of that happening here on the Central Coast, and more restaurants opening for limited capacity indoor seating. So there's signs of, I would say, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel in this, and with that brings, the ability for get-togethers, like you said, and a lot of things that you guys do. So, hopefully, we're past the near-term part of this, but who knows, right? It's been kind of a crazy ride for the last year, and just hopeful that there's an ability for us to all get together at some point again. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nick, man, it's good talking to you. I appreciate your insight, just kind of bringing, like I said, kind of a different perspective to this. I think we've all got our, I would call it unconscious bias on a lot of different things and where we stand with stuff. But kind of, I think what I take away today is, clearly, contact your state senators and representatives, both on the front end and in the back end of this thing. Speak your mind up front, thank them for what they're doing. But at the same time, having the boots on the ground, I think in California is what's going to really ensure, that we continue to defeat a bill like this or any bills in the future. But more importantly than that we're protecting, our freedom to hunt, our freedom to recreate, to do the things that, we've done for a lot of years. So, thanks for your support. Thanks for the work that you guys do. this platform helps push that narrative out to a pretty large basis of people, a lot of subscribers, a lot of people listen. So I think it's important that we do this kind of stuff to, again, promote the positive, successful narrative and things that are happening versus all the negative. So thanks for coming on, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on and getting the word out, because without people like you helping out and being vocal, the word definitely isn't going to get out there. So, having people that have a platform like yours in order to get the word out and bring people like me on to any type of conservation work in order to tell people what they can do and get involved and make sure that something like this doesn't go through is extremely important. So really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, man. And then just kind of lastly, if someone was interested in either signing up, what's the best way to get involved in BHA, or is it through social media? Is it through the website? What's, just for the listeners to know, if they're first time listening to this here, have never heard of BHA, what's the best way for someone to get involved?
Yeah. So if you go on Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, we have a website. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the map of the United States. And then if you click on California, you'll kind of see everything that we're up to, events, policies, anything that might affect your public land or wildlife access, then it'll be on there. We have a blog. There's obviously, go to the site. We'd love to have you sign up as a member. If you're not ready to do that, you can join the email alert list, and then we'll bring you up to speed if anything like the Senate Bill 252 goes through again. So that's what I always recommend to people. If you're not, money right now is especially tight. So if you're not ready to become a member, at least you can check out the website and be involved and stay alert. Awesome, man.
Thanks. Well, check out the website. Appreciate you having you on. And again, from your perspective, coming from the chair of the California chapter, I think it's important that, like I say, we have a voice, we talk about it, and we push this narrative is really what's going to get us through and be successful in when these types of bills and different initiatives get thrown our way. So anyway, man, thanks for coming on. Appreciate having you. And stay in touch, man.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Hey everyone, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.